So, hello and welcome to our podcast. And it's a great pleasure to welcome Dr. Leo Gallant. He's a board certified internist practicing in New York City and who is recognized as a world leader in functional and integrative medicine and the pioneer in the study of intestinal permeability and the gut microbiome as they impact immune function and systemic health. So since the beginning of the pandemic, Dr. Gallant has devoted most of the time to research on COVID-19 and to the education of other health practitioners in understanding the complex biology of the disease.
There is a solution to this kind of low inflammation apoptosis, loss of brain cells, which is to stimulate the production of a protein, an endogenous factor that the brain makes. It is part of the way the brain responds to trauma and injury, and it permits the survival of nerve cells, and it also strengthens the connections to other nerve cells. And this is a protein called BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor. You can measure brain-derived neurotrophic factor in blood. It doesn't necessarily tell you very sensitively what happens in the brain, but with COVID-19 and people who become very ill, there is a decline in blood levels. As people recover, the blood levels return to normal, but we don't know what happens to the brain levels, and you probably need more than normal brain levels in order to boost cognitive function.
So does it mean that the damage that COVID does to the brain and cognitive function itself is reversible?
Oh yes, it is reversible. And I've seen it reversed in so many ways, and in people who have the post-COVID brain fog. And I don't think we understand everything about that damage. BDNF, I think, is central, but there may be some things that are continuing to suppress BDNF after COVID that are very hard to measure. Inflammation, for example, might be persisting. Low-grade chronic inflammation suppressing BDNF, and at a level that it's not going to show up on most blood tests. So I do believe that reversal of inflammation is always important for recovery from COVID-19. BDNF is one particular factor that I target to try and enhance brain recovery. So there's a major impact of diet on BDNF, and there's also a major impact of diet on inflammation in the body. And the bacteria that live in the gut microbiome, turns out play a very important role in regulating BDNF and systemic inflammation. One of the links is a chemical that is produced by intestinal bacteria. It's a chemical called butyrate or butyric acid. It is a short-chain volatile fatty acid that stimulates the brain to increase the production of BDNF. Now, butyrate is produced in the large intestine by the action of normal, healthy bacteria that ferment carbohydrate. And the carbohydrate that they like the most is present in the form of fiber. So that high fiber diets enhance the production of butyrate when you have the right bacteria in the large intestine. Now, one of the problems with COVID is that these bacteria tend to be negatively affected by the presence of COVID in the GI tract.
Yeah, so it does seem that the illness become multi-systemic, and we need to start treating microbiome first in order to improve the cognitive function of the brain. So yes, it's important to keep in mind that people who are post-COVID, they need to look after their diets and help in any possible way to treat that gut first. So that's very important.
Yes, this is a very complex, multi-layered disease, COVID-19, both in the acute phase and certainly in long COVID. And the gut is really important to the process of healing. And what seems to be most important in the gut is the presence of bacteria that produce butyrate. Butyrate, because it is of the type of chemical it is, diffuses very readily from the intestine into the body. It travels throughout the body where it has anti-inflammatory effects, and it gets into the brain where it is not only anti-inflammatory, it stimulates production of BDNF, and it increases a process called neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to generate new connections after they've been damaged. And a typical Western diet, such as is consumed in the UK, Western Europe, and the US, has been shown in mice to impair neuroplasticity. So you need to be eating a very healthy plant-based diet. Now that may or may not be easy for you to do. There are some other things you can do if, in addition to diet. And one of my favorite in the setting of COVID-19 is a bioflavonoid called curcumin, which is found in the spice turmeric. And curcumin actually has been shown to boost memory, not only in animals, but in human clinical controlled studies. In animals, it raises the level of BDNF in the brain, and it increases the reactivity and survival of nerve cells. Stress and the steroids that are released by stress actually reduce BDNF. So a lot of people who get COVID-19 receive steroids as part of the treatment, especially if they're quite ill. That's going to diminish neuroplasticity, and it's going to decrease levels of BDNF in the brain. Curcumin can protect against that. And there's a study, there have been 2 studies on the use of curcumin in acutely ill hospitalized patients with COVID-19, randomized controlled clinical trials, one from Iran and one from India, recently published, which showed a marked protective effect of curcumin in addition to standard care on the recovery, survival and recovery from acute COVID-19. So, I think curcumin is something people should be supplementing with before they get COVID-19, if they get COVID-19, and afterwards for being anti-inflammatory and protecting the brain. The doses needed, if you're probably about 1,000 milligrams a day. Clinical trials of curcumin in humans have shown that it elevates BDNF in blood. This is not in people with COVID-19. These are studies that were published before the pandemic. But in people with diabetes, who to begin with have depressed BDNF, 500 to 750 milligrams daily was shown to raise their BDNF levels to normal. In women with premenstrual syndrome, it was found that BDNF was low during the premenstrual phase, the late luteal phase, and that curcumin at a similar dose increased the level of BDNF in blood and relieved the symptoms of PMS. And in people with depression, 1,000 milligrams a day of curcumin was found to raise plasma BDNF, and the BDNF in people with depression is depressed, and it raised it up to normal. And it also improved their clinical response to antidepressant drugs. Didn't substitute for the drugs, but the drugs work better. Exercise has a very positive effect on BDNF, at least in laboratory studies. Now, of course, if you have long COVID, you have to be really careful with exercise because so many people get worse with exercise. And you need to be very careful. You need to gauge your exercise carefully so that you do not crash after your exercise. And if you do that, if walking half a mile leads to a crash, you're doing too much exercise. Try walking an eighth of a mile and then a quarter mile. You really need to rest and build up very slowly. But if you are able to exercise in laboratory studies have been shown to help. And vitamin B3, niacin, stimulates the production of BDNF. We don't exactly know what the mechanisms are. It may be a direct mechanism. It may also be that niacin is important for the function of powerhouses, energy powerhouses in the body called mitochondria. And mitochondria are very important for brain function. And niacin plays a critical role in stimulating mitochondrial function. Another substance that's been shown to raise BDNF in humans is whole coffee fruit concentrate, 100 milligrams a day. There's a proprietary product that's out there. It's pretty low in caffeine. It's not the caffeine that's doing it. It's probably the flavonoids and other polyphenols that are in the coffee bean. Now, omega-3 fats can play an important role. And it doesn't matter whether these are fish oils or animal-derived omega-3s, because fish oils have been shown to benefit memory in humans, controlled clinical trials. The benefits have been attributed to the combination of EPA and DHA, which are the long-chain fatty acids, essential fats that are in the fish oil. But alpha-linolenic acid, which is a vegetable based omega-3, it's found in flaxseed and chia seed and hemp seed. Alpha-linolenic acid in an animal model of stroke has been shown to help recovery and increase the level of BDNF in the brain. So if you can't take fish oils or don't want to take fish oils, you can use these seeds, freshly ground flax, chia, or hemp seed. Now, the dose matters if you're going to use fish oils and you have cognitive problems. 1,200 milligrams a day of EPA plus DHA had no effect in a human clinical trial. It took 2,200 milligrams a day in healthy older adults to enhance memory. And in people with Alzheimer's disease, it took 3,000 milligrams a day combined with alpha-lipoic acid, which is an antioxidant, at a dose of 600 milligrams a day to slow the cognitive decline during Alzheimer's. Alpha-lipoic acid has a number of beneficial effects as an antioxidant. I generally recommend 3,000 milligrams a day of EPA plus DHA and 600 milligrams a day of alpha-lipoic acid to try and improve cognitive function after COVID-19. There's another bioflavonoid, different from curcumin, called fisetin, which has been shown to enhance neuroplasticity. Its effects on BDNF have not been studied. The food that has the greatest number of fisetin is strawberries. 1 cup of strawberries has 25 milligrams of fisetin. And there's a comprehensive review from the Salk Institute in San Diego that looked at all of the preclinical work, that is the laboratory work on fisetin, in which it prevents the development and progression of many neurologic disorders and can reduce age-associated memory changes in the brain. Fisetin in food promotes hippocampal neuroplasticity. The hippocampus is the memory center of the brain. This is in animals. In a study of people who had had a stroke, 100 milligrams of fisetin a day for 7 days. Now that's the same as eating basically 4 cups of strawberries a day. Improved the outcome of treatment and reduced markers of inflammation in the blood. I think fisetin is a really important nutrient in recovery from COVID-19. A colleague of mine and I designed a shake that we call a high fisetin smoothie with strawberries, blueberries, green tea, and a bunch of several other greens that have it. And I've used it with patients who have had cognitive problems and been surprisingly impressed by, number one, how well it tastes. People love to take it, and the changes that people have noted over time. Fisetin is also available as a dietary supplement. Now, there's another bioflavonoid called luteolin, which has been shown to have many mechanisms of neuroprotection. Again, specific effect on BDNF hasn't been studied. But in luteolin is anti-inflammatory. It stabilizes some cells in the immune system called mast cells that are involved in the inflammatory response to COVID-19. And there's been a lot of interest in the role of mast cells in contributing to the inflammation of long COVID. Luteolin gets into the brain if it's consumed in a liposomal form. It's not readily absorbed. You need a lot of it if you're just trying to get it from food. But a liposomal preparation of luteolin does get into the brain. There are several products that are available, pure luteolin or luteolin mixed with other flavonoids. In animal models, it's reverse learning and memory deficits. And in a human clinical trial, where it was combined with mangiferin, it was shown to enhance sprint performance, muscle oxygen extraction, and oxygen delivery to the brain in athletes. The doses used were 45 and 90 milligrams. 45 milligrams of luteolin worked well. The food with the greatest concentration of luteolin is celery. And I've wondered whether there's a certain infatuation with celery juice in the US, whether people aren't juicing stalks of celery to get luteolin as one delivery system. Just talking about brain oxygenation, aside from direct entry into the brain through the nose, the other way that COVID-19 impacts the brain is through blood vessels, and probably by inducing inflammation of the blood vessels in the brain and clogging them, because blood clots are an important part of what COVID does in the body. Enhancing oxygenation of the brain is really important for COVID recovery. Another plant-derived substance that's been shown to help cognitive function is resveratrol. In the US National Library of Medicine, there are 15 randomized controlled clinical trials on the ability of resveratrol to enhance cognition. They almost all show positive effects. And what's amazing to me is the wide range of doses that are used. Ordinarily, resveratrol is thought not to be very well absorbed. Yet in a study of postmenopausal women, 75 milligrams a day, which is a pretty low dose, was found to enhance blood flow in the brain and cognitive function. And that is something that we're looking for after recovery from COVID. In older adults, 200 milligrams of resveratrol a day improves memory and hippocampal, this phenomenon called hippocampal functional connectivity, which is the ability to link memories. At 1,000 milligrams a day, but not 300, psychomotor speed, which is the speed of response, verbal responses to cues, was enhanced. And in veterans suffering from Gulf War syndrome, which may have some similarities to post-COVID, there was an improvement in doses of 200 and 600 milligrams a day. And resveratrol in animal studies has been shown to enhance neuroplasticity. To summarize, this is what I recommend: a whole foods, low sugar diet, high in vegetables and omega-3 fats from fish and some of the seeds I mentioned, walnuts, also an excellent source of plant-based omega-3s, supplementation with prebiotics, probiotics, and also with butyrate. Butyrate is available as a supplement. Regular exercise is tolerated. Of all the exercises that have been studied, swimming seems to have the greatest enhancing effect on BDNF and cognitive function. And Possibly, I mean, I know I've seen a lot of patients who cannot tolerate exercising on land, but if they have access to a pool, they can begin to exercise in the water. Supplementation with bioflavonoids like curcumin, fisetin, and luteolin, and with resveratrol. Now, many of these supplements have an additional beneficial effect, which is curcumin and resveratrol in particular, omega-3 fats also directly or indirectly enhance the function of an enzyme called ACE2, which, as most people know these days, is the receptor on the cell for COVID-19. COVID-19 enters your cells by attaching to ACE2, and it destroys it in the process. And these supplements and this dietary pattern can help to restore ACE2. So I think there are multiple levels of benefits from this protocol: BDNF, control of inflammation, and restoration of ACE2 activity.
Thank you very much. That was very informative. It's a pleasure to know that there are things that people can do, not just, sit and wait till there will be a magic medicine available for restoring their cognitive function. And there are these little helpers that can help restore the brain function, and it's easily available in any country, and just people need to consider to take those.